Oh, that's not right. Just get...
Give me your money.
Where are you?
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is impressive in more ways than one, but perhaps the highlight of the animated movie is how it brings back one of the most underrated Superman villains of all time, the malevolent Dr. Jonathan Orne, aka The Spot. Looks can be deceptive, and even though he seems like Marvel's take on Polka Dot Man, his role in the movie makes you realize just how serious his powers really are. With this intimidating take on The Spot, in this video, we decided to dive deeper into his physiological details and understand how this supervillain works in mysterious ways. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
So are you like a cow or a Dalmatian?
I am the Spot.
How did Dr. Jonathan Orne turn into The Spot? There is something intriguing about a nerd turning into a menacing supervillain, and the journey of Dr. Jonathan Orne to becoming The Spot is a fascinating one. This brilliant scientist from MIT took up a job under the crime lord Kingpin, who was curious about unraveling the science behind teleportation. A superhero named the Cloak had these powers, and Orne was asked to research on the same so that Kingpin could create a superpowered henchman. Dr. Jonathan Orne's work led him to creating a pitch-black portal in the middle of his laboratory, and in desperation, he stepped into the portal. By the time he teleported back to his world, his body was covered with black spots, and the Dalmatian pattern on his body had more repercussions than he realized at that moment. His face had almost vanished, and his skin turned into a bright white shade, with black spots all over. And these spots could function as portals to various dimensions. Most of his comic book story arcs treated him no better than a low-level goon and a laughingstock. But Across the Spider-Verse offers us glimpses of just what he can accomplish.
Those portals are too dangerous. You've got to stop using them.
Nonsense.
Oh boy.
Exploring the Spot's incredible teleportation and dimension hopping abilities. After being exposed to another dimension, his skin was bleached white and black spots appeared all over his body, which were basically warps in space. These could transport anything or anyone to another dimension, and the teleportation skills of the Spot were not just restricted to himself. He could also partially teleport a body part, and this could be done in a flash during a fight to confuse his opponent. The Spot also learnt the art of manipulating these portal openings on his body, and he could take them off or simply place them somewhere else according to his requirements. We have even seen him suspend the spots in thin air, and the longer he remained in this condition, the more experienced he grew. His control over his teleportation powers is an ever-improving process, and you can be sure that in the sequel to Across the Spider-Verse, the Spot will be back in a more powerful avatar than what you have seen so far.
That's not funny.
Don't do that.
Miles's grades are pretty.
How does the Spot's body generate and control the portals? The Spot might not have 10 different high-end superpowers, but his one special condition enables him to require no more. We have already established that he is capable of generating and controlling the portals, but the mechanism behind this ability is definitely up for debate because of multiple interpretations across various media. One of the probable reasons behind his control over the portals could be his own body generating and manipulating quantum energy. This energy is channeled through his body and allows him to open and close the portals at will. He is able to concentrate this energy on various parts of his body, and these become the focal points for the creation of portals. This focused energy could enable him to create gateways between various dimensions. After creating the portals, the Spot is able to control their shape, size, and orientation, and he can expand or contract the portals according to his requirement.
There's no need for all this. I'm not a criminal. I just need a little capital for my research.
Does controlling the portals require tremendous mental focus? As amazing as his powers might seem, the Spot is only able to perform the impossible task of generating and controlling portals because of his mental focus. He requires a lot of concentration to determine the exact destination of the portals and also the duration for which they would be open. His effectiveness is solely reliant on these accurate calculations, and even the slightest failure can end up making his fights look extremely comical. Even for this, experience is the key, and the longer the Spot remains in his bizarre condition, the better his mental focus gets.
Gotcha.
What happened to his physical body after his transformation? With the interdimensional cocktail that he becomes, you cannot really blame us for wondering if he still has a physical body intact. While it might come as a surprise for many, the Spot does in fact have a physical form even after his transformation. He is not just a bundle of energy, but it is his physical body that allows him to concentrate and channel the quantum energy that is required for the creation of the portals. Thus, his powers are technically tied to his physical body, but it also leaves him slightly vulnerable, which we will explore later in the video.
You're the one who needs a lesson.
Spider-Man!
How does the Spot manage to defeat the Spider-Sense? If you are a Spider-Man fan, you are well aware of how many times his Spider-Sense has saved his life against superior enemies. One of the greatest assets of the friendly neighborhood superhero is his ability to not be taken by surprise, and the Spot manages to override this invincibility aspect by evading the Spider-Sense. The Spider-Sense has been found to be lacking when he fights opponents who are much faster than him. While taking on the likes of Speed Demon and Quicksilver, Spider-Man couldn't make the best use of his spider sense, and it is the same when he comes up against the Spot. It is probably the quick teleportation fight by the Spot that baffles the spider sense, and it proved to be decisive in a few of their encounters. It might look funny as the Spot pops up randomly from one of the black spots and lands a blow, but it is not so hilarious for Spider-Man, who needs to revisit his strategies against the supervillain. The Spot makes use of all these portals quite effectively to ensure that Spider-Man can rarely get the perfect hit on his body.
To send out his portals!
Can the Spot match up to other supervillains in terms of brute strength? The answer to this question may vary depending on the version of the Spot that you are exploring. Some comic book story arcs that treat him as a laughingstock do not take his powers seriously, while some others show him as a cold-blooded killer. That being said, the Spot has never really been known for his physical strength. He is not someone who can go and take on someone like the Hulk, at least not in the conventional ways. His real strength lies in his agility and speed, which comes from mastering the use of multiple portals to launch attacks on his enemies. He mostly outmaneuvers his opponents in a fight, and his masterful use of the spots on his body masks his inability to pick up tons of weight or take down someone in a hand-to-hand encounter. Let's not forget that even someone like Spider-Man took a lot of time to land his first punch on the Spot. You don't need physical powers when you have such incredible capabilities. Exploring the complex psychology of the Spot. Is he mentally unstable? A majority of the supervillains that we encounter have some mental disorder or psychological issues, but the Spot certainly steals the show in this regard. Most of his adaptations, including comic books, the animated series, and the recently released animated movie, depict him as someone who has had a psychological breakdown. His erratic behavior and unpredictable mood swings are a great indication of his mental state, and this also explains how he can be extremely bipolar. In Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, he blames Miles Morales for his situation, although the real blame should have been pointed elsewhere, towards someone like Kingpin. His demented and illogical mental state can also be seen from his general behavior throughout the movie. His fractured psyche results in hallucinations and dissociation, and the traumatic events of his past may be linked to his condition. Being too long in other dimensions may have taken a toll on his body, and it could also stem from the trauma of constantly being under the fear of being executed by Kingpin for failure to live up to his expectations. In the comic books, the Spot is generally portrayed as someone who is a nerd and a coward. He is happy to work for other major supervillains, and most story arcs paint a picture of a secondary character in his personality. His mental stability is always questionable, and he is a coward with deep-rooted issues on most occasions. We are glad that the cinematic interpretation does justice to his true powers, because the Spot in the new movie is terrifying and hilarious at the same time. His unpredictability only adds to the intimidation factor, and we cannot get enough of his complex personality. Whatever you may say about his mental state, you have to admit that he is still smart enough to outwit Spider-Man and other formidable characters.
Shouldn't you be the mascot at a fire station or something? Whoa!
How intelligent is the Spot? He might be bonkers in the head, but it would be terribly wrong to question his intelligence. Before turning into the Spot, Dr. Jonathan Owen was a brilliant scientist who found a way to artificially mimic certain powers of the cloak. Stepping into the accidentally created portal without knowing the consequences might not have been the smartest thing to do, but Owen didn't really have a choice. Besides, it also shows that despite being somewhat cowardly, he was prepared to risk it all for science. Even after transforming into the Spot, he made several adjustments to his condition that indicated a genius at work. He learned to manipulate the spots on his body and theorized on how to master his new condition. Basically, the Spot remained a brilliant scientist even after his transformation, and this incredible intellect also came in handy against some superior opponents. Can the Spot have kids? As it turns out, Dr. Jonathan Owen did have a son, but that was before his transformation into the Spot. One of his comic book story arcs focuses on him taking up a ruthless vigilante role after his son is caught up in a drive-by shooting and hospitalized. He kills everyone involved, and this was one of the rare moments where a story arc treated his character respectfully. Whether or not he can reproduce after transforming into the Spot has never been revealed, but it does seem unlikely because of his physical condition. Imagine his partner trying to touch him and ending up in another reality because of the spots on his body. Physical intimacy might be a major issue for this insanely powerful supervillain, but clearly he has bigger things to worry about as the Spot.
Redirecting portals now.
How can the Spot be neutralized? It is extremely difficult to contain a supervillain who doesn't have a big ego and is smart enough to run away when things are going against him. The Spot is essentially a nerd at heart, and he knows when it is time to step back. Moreover, he has the perfect getaway with multiple dimensions awaiting him in the wink of an eye. However, the Spot does have a slight chink in his armor of dimensional portals shielding him. He has a limited number of spots on his body, and if the fight gets too intense, he often ends up using almost all of them sooner than he can reabsorb the spots. Thus, there comes a point where he runs out of spots on his body, and there is no place to hide and teleport away. There has been one such instance in the comic books, and it allowed Spider-Man to land a neat punch on his body, which became completely white without the black spots. A single punch was solid enough for the Spot to run away, and he almost gave up his ambitions of being a supervillain for the time being. Although this can be one of the most obvious ways to defeat him, over the years the Spot has continued to evolve. Since his physical body is almost like an ever-evolving process, it is quite likely that there will come a point when he will never run out of spots on his body. He keeps collecting more and more spots to increase his powers, and this vulnerability might soon be closed off. We have to wait for the sequel to Across the Spider-Verse to find out how the Spot is finally defeated.
Like a sticky situation. Let me give you a hand. Oh, actually, a foot.
Is it impossible to kill the Spot? Well, defeating him is one thing, but killing him seems to be a whole different ballgame. After all, it is insanely difficult to kill someone whom you practically cannot touch without being thrown into another dimension. The Spot can only be cornered if Spider-Man fights him long enough for him to throw around all his interdimensional spots. Can this situation be used to kill him, though? The Spot still has a physical body, and a killing blow in this situation might just end things for him. The comic book story arcs have been quite disrespectful in this regard, and the Spot has been killed off on multiple occasions, only to be brought back in another story. However, if you consider the cellular changes that the Spot must have undergone after his transformation, it seems like he is not human enough to warrant a regular death. At least the cinematic version that we have seen is near immortal and cannot be killed as such. Maybe there can be a way to incapacitate him for a long time, or keep him locked up in a dimension where he can do no damage. It must be ensured that there is no way for him to come back and hop across dimensions, because that would again reinstate his powers. The trick might be hidden in the situation where he loses all his bodily spots, and his opponent has to send him through a portal that opens up in a desolate dimension with no resources available for him. If the portal is closed in time, the Spot will be helpless out there, with no means to create something capable of sending him across dimensions. In one of the comic book story arcs, the Spot is shown to have been restricted to his weak human form in a prison that negates all kinds of superpowers. Such a specialized prison cell might not just contain the Spot, but can also be used to kill him if he briefly becomes mortal just like anyone else. It would surely be an epic showdown, and it would would require some serious planning to put an end to his menace permanently. What is the spotted dimension? Is it the secret to the Spot's immortality? We have already spoken about how challenging it is to defeat the Spot, let alone kill him for good. One of the secrets behind his insane powers is his access to the spotted dimension. Whenever his physical body is fatally wounded, he can simply disintegrate and reconstitute itself in this spotted dimension. This is what makes him somewhat of an immortal, and we have seen instances where a decapitated Spot was capable of speech and clearly still alive in some form. If someone were to destroy the Spot, he would have to ensure that there is no way for him to reach the spotted dimension, because things would simply start all over again in that case.
What are you, some kind of masochist?
Our final words. It has been a journey to remember, from a running joke and a villain for hire to potentially becoming one of Spider-Man's biggest threats. The Spot has announced his presence in the recently released animated movie, and from the indications and fan reactions, he is here to stay. Do let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on this unique supervillain, and don't forget to tell us about the aspects of his anatomy that impressed you the most. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Miles, mira, eso es imposible.
I gotta go. All right.